Hey everybody, it's Mitch, and welcome to my next video. Today we are going to be talking about clerics, and more specifically, we're going to be talking about turn undead because it's complicated. So we're going to get into that. In addition to figuring out like how turn undead works and all that, we're going to be talking about some of the things that you can trade turn undead for. So yeah, let's jump into this. All right. So first up. You're able to do turn undead a number of times per day equal to 3 plus your charisma modifier. So if you have a high charisma, you can do it a lot. If you don't, you can't. Generally, you'll want a decent charisma. Although with clerics, that's not their best stat. It's usually like their second or third best stat. So you might not end up with the highest. So anyways, let's look into how it works. So you can, so it has a 60-foot range, so you're able to turn things within 60 feet of you, starting with the closest. That's important. Next up, you have to do a turning check. So after you've declared that you're going to make a turn undead attempt, which is a standard action and requires you to take your holy symbol and show it to, the undead. I know that was really close to my hand, but you need to show that, display that to them. They will, that'll then activate the turn undead. It's a standard action, counts as an attack. So what you do is you roll a d20, and after you've rolled the d20, you're going to add your charisma modifier to that. Then you will look at the chart, table 8-9 on page 159 of the book. This is what I'm looking at here. So you're going to take that number that you got, and you're going to see what it is. So got a d20 right here. Let's see what we got. Let's say we got a +3 charisma. Let's say. I just rolled a 9. You can kind of see it. It's really hard to get that on camera. Anyways, so you rolled a 9. So 9 plus 3, that's 12. So you look at the chart, 10 through 12, that's cleric's level. So nothing. You're just going to go with your cleric's level. So say you're, I don't know, 5th level cleric. So your turn undead check is 5. So that is the highest number of hit dice of undead that you're able to turn. So if the undead have more than 5 hit dice, you can't do anything to them. Now, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to roll 2d6. So I have a couple of d6 here. I should have a lot more d6 here. More d20 there too, actually. Yeah. Anyway, so I roll, and I got a 6, a 5, and a 1. So that one was a little easier to show since it's just easier. Anyways, so that was 6. So I can turn, and I said I had, 3 charisma. So add the charisma to that. So that's 9. So I can turn up to 9 hit dice worth of undead. And the maximum is 5. Okay. So say you have, and you're going to go with the closest first. So say you have some various undead near you. The book gives some pretty good examples of that. And, you can turn a bunch of them. Like you can turn like a couple, or what, like you can say there are a bunch of like CR 1 HD undead there. You can turn 9 of them. Great. If there are a bunch of 2 2 HD undead, you could turn 8 of them? Sorry, not 8, 4 of them. Because you have 9, you're going to lose on 1. If there was 3 HD guys, you could turn 3, so on and so forth. Of course, if there's different amounts, you can mix and match. But if they're CR5, you can turn just 1. CR6, you can't turn any, though, because the maximum you did was 5. So CR6 is too powerful. Now, yeah, so now let's get into what happens when you turn. So when you turn something, you turn the undead, you cause them to fear you. So they will start to flee from you as fast as they are able. And if they cannot flee from you, then they will cower, and all attacks against them will be at a +2 bonus. So effectively, they lose 2 to their AC. Although technically it's adding 2 to the attacks. Weird that they're doing it that way, but it is what it is. Same difference though. Anyways, so they're a little easier to hit, about 10% easier on average, excluding extremes. In which case it doesn't affect things. Anyways, okay, so that's how that'll work. And they'll do that for a full minute, so 10 rounds. And during that time, you're out. And during that time, you cannot approach them within 10 feet. So you can stand within 10 feet. So if they happen to be right next to you, it doesn't just automatically end. But you can't get any closer to them. And you also cannot attack them. You also can't attack them. Well, I guess if you're like right next to them, you could probably attack them. But normally you can only attack them at range. Actually, if they're right next to you, the book's actually a little ambiguous. So talk to your DM. Ask them on that one because the book doesn't specify that one. It says that you can attack at range, and it says if you approach them. But if you don't need to approach them, I don't know if you can still attack them in melee or not. Now, your allies can attack in melee without problem. That's not an issue. And you can attack them in range, no problem. But if you walk up to them, that'll end it. Unless they're like far away. Like if they're 20 feet away and you walk a couple feet up, that's fine. You just can't get too close. So yeah, that's basically how that works. Very useful because they're basically done at that point. And even if you don't go for them right away, you can go after the other guys. There's a lot of tactical reasons to it, although it's not as good as many other options. It can be useful though. So then you have another thing that can happen called destroying undead, which will automatically happen if your cleric level is is at least twice as high as the hit dice of that undead. So if they just have 1 HD and you're level 2, they're destroyed. Those things go real easy. Yeah, so or your effective cleric, if you're a paladin, you're effectively a cleric 3 levels lower than your paladin level, which is not bad actually. At low levels it's terrible, but at high levels pretty good. Anyway, so yeah, you can destroy undead. It happens automatically. It doesn't take any extra resources. It's just they're so terrified they just get destroyed. Really as simple as that. Now, if you're an evil cleric, things work a little bit differently. So there's a couple of options you can do. The way turning works, you still do your turning check just the same. You still do your damage just the same, which is not really damage. They call it damage, but it's not damage. Turning damage is when you roll those 2d6, added your charisma. That's just the maximum number. Like I say, it's confusing. So the turning check and turning damage are the same for Rebuke Undead. Now with Rebuke Undead, what it'll do is it will make them cower. So it's sort of the same as if with turn, except for when they flee, except for when they flee and can't flee. Sorry, except for the main difference is there's no rule about getting close, so you can walk right up to them. But they won't run away. They just cower instantly. So kind of better, I guess. Although, and more often than now, although command is still way better. So instead of destroying undead like a good cleric would, you will command them. And these things work completely different. So good clerics use positive energy. Evil clerics use negative energy to do their turning. Anyway, so that's just something I needed to get out of the way. So commanding undead, that is going to basically you control the undead. You can control a certain number of undead equal to, I'm not sure, any one time a cleric whose total hit dice is not, so you can go up to your level. Okay, that's not bad. Sorry. Should have remembered more. I thought to remember. Anyways, so you can go up to your level. Don't use evil clerics that often. But anyway, so you can go up to your level in terms of hit dice. So number of hit dice equal to your cleric level. All right. Now we got that settled. That's how many you can command. It takes a standard action to command them. mentally, meaning you don't need to actually vocalize it. So that's kind of nice. Now, evil clerics actually have a couple extra options that good clerics do not. They have dispel turning. So say a good cleric had turned some undead, they can use their Rebuke Undead to cancel that. And basically they do the whole everything just normal. It's just now the dispel, the check is going to be against that cleric's turn undead attempt. So they're not going to, their maximum hit dice for the purposes of this is going to be higher. At least for if it works, although their hit dice will still be the same for, yeah. So for turning check, you're going to use the opposing good cleric's turning check. You got to beat it. But for the damage, that will just be as normal. So you'll use the undead's actual hit dice for damage. Now you can also bolster undead. Now for this, I believe you can only do this on one undead. They don't specify, but I believe it's just one undead that you can do this on. And you simply make a turning check, and that will be that particular undead's turning check to make its new effective hit dice, so that it's harder for undead to for a good cleric to turn that particular undead. Now, neutral clerics, they can go either way for the most part. There are a few specific deities that specify you have to go a certain way in terms of going turn or rebuke. Now, the direction that you go will be the same as the direction you go on whether you can spontaneously cast healing or harming spells. So that is something that you need to keep in mind. As I mentioned, paladins turn undead at 3 levels lower. They start at 4th level, obviously. I mean, you got to have at least one. So yeah, 4 minus 3 is 1. So yeah, sometimes you can turn things besides undead. There are various ways to do that, mostly through domains. There's some feats. There's various ways you can turn quite a few other things. Pretty much any elemental, there's ways to turn them with the right stuff. Yeah, I think domains mostly, and there's ways to turn other stuff too. And there's also other things you can do with your turn undead attempts. So let's get into that, because that's where things get interesting. So we got all our basics of how turning undead itself works. But how does, what else can you do with it? Well, one option is divine metamagic. That is something in, I believe the Complete Divine is where you'll see that. Basically, what you can do is, it takes a few feats. You have to take the actual metamagic feat, and then you can also have to take divine metamagic for that particular metamagic feat, which is fairly feat intensive. And then what you can do is you can use a number of turn undead attempts equal to 1 plus the number of levels that you would normally have to increase a spell by to gain a metamagic effect on the spell. And you can expend that many turn undead attempts as a free action in order to, actually it's as a non-action, I think, in order to put that metamagic effect on the spell for free. Like, it doesn't cost any resources other than those turn undead attempts. So that's pretty nice, actually. Like, you can just, get a quicken spell. And because you get it for free, you can do it on your highest level spell and put metamagic feats on like high level spells, and they still count as like lower level spells because they take the lower, they don't actually up the spell slot. So that can be really nice. The problem is it's really limited. With a cleric that's not particularly bolstering his charisma, you're only going to be able to do it maybe 2 or 3 times a day. If you're pushing that charisma hard, you might be able to get 4, 5, 6. Maybe once you get to high levels, that's possible if you're really driving that charisma up. You also basically get 1 more use of it per day every time you take the extra turning feat, which gives you 4 extra uses of turn undead, which is like maybe 1 more use of divine metamagic. It varies depending on the feat that you're putting on, and you can do multiple. But you have to use it for every single one, so it can be really expensive to do multiple on one. Yeah, so then there's a few other things you can do with Turn Undead. You can also do, I think it's Divine Focus. There's a few different versions of that can give you various different effects, various different potencies. So those aren't bad. There's really a number of different things you can do with it, which isn't a bad option, especially if you're doing a decent amount of multi-classing, because like if you're trying to get into prestige classes, most prestige classes won't advance your Turn Undead. So if you're jumping into those, your Turn Undead is going to be a lot lower. So it's going to make that turning check much smaller, which is going to make your ability to turn undead a lot lower. It can be a real problem there. Yeah, so that can be an issue. You definitely are going to, if that's the case, want to use the ability to use your turn undead for other things, because that doesn't how potent your turn undead is irrelevant for those things. It just matters how many times per day, and the number of times per day doesn't increase as you gain levels in Cleric. That only increases with the feat or with increasing your charisma modifier. So those extra bonuses are really good if you're not keeping that Cleric level up. If you're keeping your Cleric level up, keeping Turn Undead itself isn't too bad. It can actually be pretty good, especially if you go into one of the couple of prestige classes that actually do advance it, like Radiant Servant of Pelor, which if you go into that one, that'll help. You actually don't need to do that, but I believe it's the sun, I believe, is one of the domains, which makes it so that all your turn, which lets you do a greater turning, which will make it so that anything you turn, you destroy. So that's pretty nice, being able to destroy all undead that you're able to turn. So none of them will cower. Now that, of course, will take up both a greater turning slot and a regular turning slot. So that's actually, no, I think, yeah, I think you only get that like once per day normally with that, and then Radiant Servant of Pelor, I think, gives that as a regular thing. I'm not sure. Yeah, but it does take up extra. It does take up double, so it'll count for both. Every greater turning counts as a turning and a greater. So that's a thing. But yeah, there's a lot to Turn Undead. It's very complicated. It can be pretty effective. I've seen it just regular Turn Undead used to great effect in one of my games. I've also seen used when it's switched out for other things, for divine metamagic or other stuff. That can be quite useful as well. So yeah, Turn Undead, very complicated, pretty good, and yeah. So if you guys enjoy this video, give it a like, leave a comment down below. Love hearing from you guys. Always nice to hear from you guys. And subscribe to the channel for more content like this. I do tons of D&D stuff. But anyways, as always, I'm Mitch. I'll be seeing you.